Thank you all for being here for our press conference that we have each Wednesday morning after a Tuesday City Council meeting. Last night, I think, was a record time for our council meeting. We got out by 6 o'clock, which was very unusual. We're usually just getting wound up by about 6. But we discussed some important topics last night, which I'll be happy to take some questions from y'all. But first, I want to make a couple of announcements. I usually like to try to make a couple of announcements on this day for things going on in the community. And the month of April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. There is an important event coming up on April the 26th with the Sexual Assault Response Team of Columbus. We'll be having an event at the Sheriff's Department on April the 26th from 11 a.m. to 12:30. I encourage folks to, if they need to learn more about sexual assault awareness and where things like that should be reported, I would encourage you to attend that event at the Sheriff's Department. Also, Saturday is Household Hazardous Waste Collection Day at the GTR landfill in Old West Point Road in Starkville, just off of USA 45A alternate. It's a day that, and I know many people wait for this day to dispose of things like aerosols, batteries, paint, chlorine, and other things like that to properly dispose it. And so, again, that's this Saturday from 9 a.m. until 2 p.m. at the GTR landfill, not the Columbus landfill, but the GTR landfill, which is actually in Starkville, just off Old West Point Road. For more information about that, you can call the Management of Solid Waste Management Authority. Their phone number is 662-324-7566. That's 662-324-7566 is the GTR Solid Waste Management Authority to learn more about Household Hazardous Waste Collection Day. And those are the two announcements that I have. And so I will take any questions that you might have about the council meeting last night.
Well, a question that was sent in light of the comments from your new CFO about the ARPA money.
Mm-hmm.
Does the city have more leeway now to spend the money, or have the regulations been loosened?
No, that's not my understanding. The regulations have not been loosened. What he was talking about is the reporting, how we would report. And because of the amount of money that we're receiving, under $10 million, the level of details in the reports are not required. We are still under the same stipulations of how we could use and spend the money. Is that the way you understood it, Jeff?
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm not totally clear on it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Okay, I have something. So Dr. Labat came into the meeting yesterday and expressed her feelings on marijuana and feels like, the city of Columbus should opt out on it. Do you have any way of how you feel about this right now?
Sure, we did. In fact, Dr. Labat and I had a conversation about her concerns about the legislation as it is currently written. Strictly, her concerns are from the standpoint of the children of Columbus and how it could potentially have an effect on the school district. I wanted to give her the opportunity to be able to speak before the council on that. So I'm very happy that she did. And I think the council was listening closely to what she said. And I talked to her last night after the meeting. I don't know that it persuaded any thoughts on, whether the city is going to stay in or opt out. We have until May 3rd to make that decision. It is, from the feedback that I have received, I think the city will stay in. I don't think we will opt out at this time. But I know that all of her concerns that she listed, if we were to stay in, I know that the council listened to closely, and much of it, is my understanding, is in the bill. The bill is over 400 pages, isn't that right?
150 plus, there are several regulations that are coming out of the Department of Health that are close to 100 pages each.
Right.
So there's a lot of regulations on top of the 450 pages.
Yes. And so we're going to continue to look at those closely and try to make the best decisions that we can for the citizens of Columbus. But I don't see any indication from the council that they are preparing to opt out.
Mayor, I know it's the difference between recreational marijuana and medical marijuana, and I think Dr. Labat, from what I heard from her last night, I don't think she's against the medical part of it. I think she's against the recreation part of it, if I'm correct. Because of the kids, like you said.
Right.
And kids, they can get over to some, it looks like candy, but it's actually fentanyl and all that kind of stuff. What's your point? How's your point of view on that?
Well, I mean, when this was voted on by the citizens of Mississippi, it passed with like over 60% of the vote. Is that right? I listened to, at a local meeting here in Columbus, I listened to an advocate for medical marijuana in Mississippi, and he was he was retired military, and he spoke about his conditions and how he was able to use medical marijuana to that had helped him in ways that other medication had not. And he spoke around the state, and I think that people listening to his situation and the reason he was for it, I think had a big impact on how people determined to vote, because just like alcohol, marijuana is a topic that people have differing opinions on. There's different data out there that you can look at to conclude whether maybe it would even be better if marijuana wasn't illegal, that it would cut out a lot of the bad elements of marijuana. And so that's a debate that'll go on for quite some time, I'm sure. But I agree with Dr. Labat that we need to be as careful as we can with access to the different types of medication for medical marijuana, the chewables and that kind of thing. If you look closely at the bill, there are stipulations in there where, and I think I would say that it's scientifically proven that, for instance, I think children with autism are listed as someone that might benefit from that. And so, especially folks who are dealing with children with autism and different things have strong opinions about it and feel strongly that access to medical marijuana will enhance their lives. Her concerns are making sure that those who are not intended to get it don't get it. And I think that's something that we have to be diligent about as we move forward with this. Anytime you're going into a new area of something like this, there are a lot of, as I've stated before, unintended consequences. And I think that's what she was asking us to be sure that we thought those things through. And I can tell you, people have been reaching out to me in the community for months about this, almost a year now, really. And so I've been weighing everything that everybody's talked about, with it, that folks who have visited the growers, plants like in Oregon and other places, talk about how, professionally they are run, that they bring, high-paying jobs to communities, that it improves the taxable income for the communities. So anytime you're looking at a new business venture like this, or any type of change in, how we, have businesses run in communities, you have to be careful and look at all areas of it. So I completely understand where she's coming from on it, and I appreciate, her willingness to come and talk before the board and be an advocate for the school district. I thought she did an amazing job with how she brought her opinions and concerns to the council.
I Dr. Levant was saying how she would like to see, if there were to have distilleries around, to have at least 1,000 feet away from the schools.
Mm-hmm.
And would the city of Columbus, keep that into consideration? Because, I mean, when it comes to medical marijuana or any kind of like THC, type of, substance, they have things that, appeal to kids, such as, gummies or anything like that. So will the school, will the city of Columbus, keep that in mind as well?
Sure. I mean, I think, we're studying the legislation now, the requirements of the state. They do give you, and Jeff, speak up if I misrepresent this in any way. You do have an option if a business is going to try to locate close to a school or a church. They can ask for a waiver of 500 feet. Is that right? Yeah.
Down to 500 feet.
Down to 500 feet, and I think.
But the entity that grant that waiver would be either the school district if it's within 1,000 feet of a school, or the child care facility if it's within 1,000 feet of the child care facility, or the what's the other?
Church.
The church itself. It's not up to the mayor and council to grant a waiver to reduce that 1,000 feet. So I don't see that as an issue. If the school district doesn't want it within 1,000 feet, it won't be within 1,000 feet is the short answer.
Yeah.
And 1,000 feet, that is a long way. It's like more than a city block.
Mm-hmm. And it's my understanding that there have been some folks who were looking at locations within the city and county who have been close to churches and have already reached out to those churches and gotten a waiver, I think in some cases, of the 500, or at least had those discussions. So again, as Jeff said, that would be outside of our purview. However, we think that, that they are entitled to that, to say no, if they don't want it close to them.
My last question on marijuana thing. On May 3rd is the last day for it. Either you opt out or you accept it. And then what happens after May 3rd, Jeff? What happens? Do you?
Well, the deadline is May 3rd, which we have a council meeting on that. And you don't opt in, you only opt out. So if the city were going to opt out, they would need to do it by the 3rd.
That's right. And then if the city were to opt out, then I think 1,500 citizens could sign a petition and then have it put to a popular vote. So that's what would, I assume, happen. I imagine there are 1,500 folks that would do that. I'm just guessing.
Yeah. And some of the surrounding communities like Caledonia who've opted out can opt back in. I forgot how many. Do you remember how many municipalities around the state? It's been 8 or 9?
I don't know how many, but
Yeah.
I know there are a few.
There are a few that have done that, but they also have the option of opting back in at any time. I would assume.
Can someone opt in and decide to opt out later, or is it too late?
Too late.
Too late, after the 3rd.
Okay, because what if they say, hey, I want to do this, and then realize, okay, this is not what I want?
Well, the city has various tools available to them. Any place that located here after we fail to opt out would be grandfathered in. But I would think the city council and the mayor could pass some more restrictive zoning that would prohibit new from coming in if they wanted to. However, the bill says you can't just draft ordinances in a way that prohibits.
Right.
They have to be reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions. So we could further refine where they can go, but we could not put them out once we've not opted out.
And just to clarify, even if the city does opt out, if I get a medical marijuana card, I can just go somewhere else to buy it, right? That doesn't mean I can't have it here.
That's exactly right.
True.
I have a question about something else. If y'all know. Is the veto of the insurance cameras, is that still standing?
Yes.
What's been done about that?
Yes. Still stands.
And I'm correct that there's no time limit on overriding veto like there is on veto something, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Just as, I guess would be the same as when we table something, there's no deadline on when we bring that back up. So yes, they can bring it back up at any time.
Okay,
But anytime I veto something, I have to do it within 5 days.
right. But there hasn't been any motion towards overriding that veto that you know of?
Correct.
There haven't been any. I mean, he would know about it if there hadn't been.
Yeah,
Oh, sure.
yeah. I feel like we need to go back to the question about the ARPA money. And I'm going to talk to Jim about that, and we'll put something in the comments about that to clarify that specifically.
The question related to, it came in terms of for employee pay and stuff like that, so that's,
Yes.
so some viewers thought that he implied that it was being loosened, the regulations, but
Mm-mm.
Well, let's just say that that's true, that because we are under that threshold, that we have more flexibility in using the money for general operations. I think that that part is true. We still have the state law that prohibits us from making unlawful donations, and that's the whole reason we did incentive pay with it. Because if you just give it as a raise, then it's going to expire, and unless we have the money from some other source, then they'll go back to their pre-raised salary, which would be quite unpopular, I bet.
Well, and that's why I want to get him to clarify that some more, because that's not the way that I understood it when he and I discussed it. It does not change how we use the money. It changes how much detail you have to report, just like your taxes. That's my understanding of it. Yours is a little different.
The final rule is really, really long, and I have really tried to make a study of it, because I thought some other entity would be doing all the reporting and compliance, so I haven't
Yeah.
spent a lot of time.
So that's why we will put a solid answer on this at this post, because that's my understanding. It's not changing any of the way that we spend the money. You have to stay within the guidelines that you have from the federal government and the state government. It's in how you report the details of the spending, is my understanding, which we'll get him to clarify.
last question I had submitted, were you encouraged last night by his financial report? Are you seeing light at the end of the tunnel?
Yes, I mean, I've been very clear to the fact that, I felt like a weight has been lifted to an extent that we have somebody in that role and they're helping us move forward on getting our finances in order. And I think that, everybody that's met him has been very impressed. I had some comments from folks who were familiar with our finances, who've worked here in the past, have texted me last night after watching him, and they were very complimentary of his response and where he is on things. Looking at his background and talking to him for a few minutes, his credentials are impeccable. I think we're very fortunate to have someone of his caliber here. And I think in just a short amount of time, he's making some very good progress, and I think that'll continue to happen.
That's all I got. Right?
All right, thank you, everybody.